Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday evening, and welcome to the July 25th edition of the Beyond the Data. Sorry we're a little bit late today. We do have personal lives as well, and sometimes things come up, and we were actually planning on having somebody else here as well, but I wasn't following the chat. But is her kitchen on fire, or what was going on? I don't know. But
I think it's just smoke filled, from what I understand.
Okay, so sorry about that, but today this is basically an edition that is an extra one because we didn't get through to talk about the press conference that Dr. Vanderhoff and Dr. Amy Edwards, and I actually cannot think of the third woman's name, from Cincinnati Children. They had a press conference last Wednesday where they talked to us in the usual way of everything is really terrible with COVID-19, and we need to be very scared of it, and addressing the whole concept of vaccine hesitancy. And they had quite some interesting commentary about it. And yeah, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time going through some of the more interesting points that they made. And again, I don't think, did you see it, Carrie?
I did not. Nope.
Oh, so this is all brand new to you again too. I think it's probably a good thing, because I think your computer would have been broken if you watched it. They definitely had some interesting comments, and it'll be really fun listening to what you have to say about some of it. As it pertains to laboratory stuff and that kind of stuff. So the first few clips I wanted to play were, they talked about it, how the vaccine is not new, it's so safe and it's so great and it's totally wonderful. Okay, so yes, I breathe in. So here's the first clip. But this is Dr. Amy Edwards. She's a fellow with the American Association of Pediatrics, the one that just pushed the masks on kids again. And she's up at University Hospital's Rainbow Babies and Children infectious disease specialist, and also a faculty member at Case Western. So
what did you say her name was?
Amy Edwards.
Amy Edwards, okay.
All right, so are you ready for this? What she has to say about mRNA technology.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yes, it's a new vaccine, but as you've already pointed out, vaccines aren't new. We've been doing vaccines for a very long time. And even though it sounds scary to say, oh, this is a new type of vaccine with this mRNA technology is not new. It's been around for ages. And there's really nothing different about the immune response to an mRNA vaccine than it is to any other vaccine, whether it's an adjuvant vaccine or a killed virus or a weakened virus vaccine. They all do the same thing, which is to activate those B cells and T cells to make us immune to future infection. And so in that sense, it's really not new. It's very old.
Yeah. So right there, she's telling us that mRNA vaccines are totally like our old school vaccines. All of our old school vaccines, which of course, I had described, I don't know how many months ago, again, what the difference is between our different varieties of vaccinations and how they function with our immune systems. And she has lumped them all in together, which is inappropriate. I probably should briefly explain some of that stuff. That we had our original kinds of vaccines, like the Salk vaccine, the polio vaccine, which used, or not polio, but smallpox, which used cowpox. You naturally infected a person, and then they developed an immunity that could also work with smallpox. This was a natural infection with a live pathogen, which activates the entirety of the immune system. And then we've moved on to the more modern vaccines, where we bypass the normal entry points, where we go straight into the muscle using inactivated or adjuvants and those kinds of things to stimulate an immune response. And now we're skipping all levels of these of our normal total cascade of immune reactions, and we're going straight into our cells to create an artificial spike protein. And they're saying equal. Oh,
I only heard one thing. I have to listen to it again, but there was only one thing that I heard that struck me as maybe not correct, and that was just when she said that it enables us to be immune to a pathogen or disease. However, she worded it, which we know that that's not true. That's exactly opposite of what the manufacturer and Dr. Fauci and um, everyone else has said. But she said mRNA technology has been around for a long time. She's correct. It has been. Um, so it's failed in the vaccine arena. We've never been successful at it because of exactly what we're seeing now. Um, but it has proved to be fantastic with target tumors, specific target tumors technology. But that's where you're taking some of the interstitial contents out of that particular individual, and then you are developing this mRNA synthetic based on the tumor contents, and then you're targeting that tumor and hitting it with that mRNA. So it's really not a blanket, nor is it a vaccine.
yeah. So what you're basically so to I think if I can jump in and kind of clarify that, basically the mRNA technology that has been actually successful in the past has been one where they take specifically the DNA and that directly from a solid tumor, remove it, and then create a synthetic mRNA that is specifically targeted to that individual's tumor. Is that correct?
Usually, I mean, and it's not, sometimes it's the tumor itself, sometimes it's the lymph. It just depends on what's happening with that individual, but it's more to that person, or there's enough material that's withdrawn from a couple different people that they're able to reproduce it in a laboratory setting, synthetic, and then use it maybe on other patients that have this similar type of tumor. Those are the trials that we've seen it be successful with, and a very high success rate. But in a vaccine, we haven't seen that yet, because
Have they
it
actually
has just failed.
approved? Have they actually approved any of the mRNA technology with the tumors?
Moderna has never had one approved.
Have there been any other ones? Do you know?
To my knowledge, no. But again, that's not uncommon, because it takes the traditional FDA pathway to approval is about 10 years, give or take. We're in our 13th year of waiting for one now. Um, and we have a lot more data than what there are for any of these mRNA vaccines that are currently out. So it's not uncommon to them to be in trial. One of the things is you have such a small cohort of people. If one of the arms of that trial, in order to get that many people, it takes time, so that you can achieve that endpoint, and that's just the rules of the FDA until COVID. But traditionally, that's been, so it's not uncommon for it to take long, or these to be in trial for a long time. I was in a trial myself, as well as my daughter, two totally separate trials for two totally separate things, but one was mRNA, and then she was in one for a biologic, and they take a long time. And actually, at the end of the trial for her, even though they all showed improvement, there was not negative side effects. At the end of the day, and the end of that trial, it was still not approved for the condition that she has. And that was several years ago. So to use it now, even though it's been approved for a different condition, she would have to use it as an off label. So it's just one of those things that happens. This is just all new territory. But I heard her say that mRNA technology has been around. That's true. It has been. And that vaccines have been around. Of course, they have been. Most of us have been vaccinated some way, somehow, for something at
Yeah,
some
and I
point.
mean that's actually kind of the basic theme of basically everything that comes out of the Ohio Department of Health, Dr.
Hmm.
Vanderhoff, is that they like to conflate things. They like to conflate. Oh, mRNA technology has been around for a long time. Yes, the concept of it has been around. I think around 30 years or something like that, but they've never really successfully brought it to market. Definitely not as a vaccine, and yes, vaccines have been around for a very long time,
Right.
uh,
And
but
I
those
would
are not.
challenge I would challenge anyone that's watching or will watch later. You can show me a vaccine that was FDA approved in under 5 years. I'll even go bigger than that. Show me a vaccine that was FDA approved under 10 years.
Yep, and those are using older technology. They
Right.
usually use they compare between an old vaccine and a new vaccine, so they're using the same carriers and adjuvants in the whole works. So we're going at warp speed here, and they're she's again dismissing this. I don't. I mean, I'm kind of like putting you on the spot here, but you had told me a story about the tumors and the treatment. Is that a story you're able to tell here in terms of what happened
Which
or not?
I'm not
With
sure. I'm not sure which one that you're talking about.
with the child with the tumor.
Mm, um, hmm, probably
No,
not.
probably
Yeah.
not. All right. Sorry for putting you on the spot there,
No,
but it was
that's
just one
okay.
of those. Yeah, that it's this is not old technology, but some of the new things we're seeing are not really new. Is that fair to say? The
Oh,
issues
very
with this vaccine is not unknown in the mRNA
right.
world.
And that's why, typically with mRNA, even with a trial, I had to be secluded myself because while I was taking that, because I live with an immunocompromised person. So I could not be around her for, within a close proximity, or we couldn't share the same utensils, any of that, for 2 weeks after each time that, I received that, just because they were monitoring and watching not only me to see my response, but her response, in case, because, she obviously doesn't have a typically functioning system. And we
Yep.
didn't want anything to, impair what was happening with her. And she was a pediatric patient. So
So
I wasn't
again,
around my family at all.
for clarification here, you were part of a trial for mRNA technology.
Correct. For target tumor.
Target tumor. So
Hmm.
again, Carrie is like this vortex of bizarreness here, working for the CDC specifically with the COVID trajectory analyst. She does lots of laboratory analysis, understands the testing technology, and she's actually been she's one of the few people who's actually experienced mRNA technology directly before
There's
all of this.
Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, the trial was huge, and those trials are ongoing. It's just,
Yeah.
if you don't have a condition that warrants the admission to that trial, then you
You're
you
not.
would not know. I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And
Um
so
yeah,
but we're definitely handling this different than any other mRNA that we've dealt with previously.
Yeah, so on that note, I think you'll enjoy this particular one. We've just beaten the dead horse about that how long it takes for these vaccines to generally come, or any procedure to generally come. And well, let's see what she has to say about that.
Yeah, but the other thing to remember is one, they've already a lot. I know Pfizer and Moderna have both applied for full approval. but it's an enormous amount of paperwork and red tape. And the FDA has said again and again that they are not going to cut any of that red tape or paperwork back. So it's a huge undertaking to get full approval for a vaccine. So even though they've begun the application process, most of us don't think that it's going to get approval till sometime early to midwinter, not because we need more data, but just because that's how long it takes. I mean, that's just the process that we and here in the United States have built into our vaccine approval process. And the process has to work itself out. So I hope that while I do understand parents wanting to wait for full FDA approval, the FDA has all the data they need to make that approval. Now it's just a matter of paperwork and red tape and ticking all of those boxes, which just takes time.
So that's incorrect. That's a very incorrect statement. And actually, Dr. Walensky, well, maybe she's right, and Dr. Walensky at the CDC and the FDA and Dr. Fauci for NIH, maybe they're all wrong. I don't know, because all three of them testified under oath just this last week that where they fall short is the safety efficacy data. So that, and they testified to Congress, and that was the words used was, we don't have big trials, but in the size arm of the trial that we have, where we fall short is safety efficacy. So that will be ongoing.
But that's, again, one of those situations where, you know, they keep telling us, well, don't worry, it's all good, except for, as you just say, they cannot stick to one storyline. They can't follow one storyline. In one group, they're saying, oh, it's the safety and efficacy that we're falling short on. Here, no, don't worry about it. It's all just paperwork. It's all good. So the next one she was talking about was pretty interesting as well. And again, goes to the level of assumptions that people who apparently are advising our governor make all the time.
No reason to think that kids aren't different in that respect. So they should respond to the vaccine just the same way everybody else does. And so I don't see any reason, not to have a child vaccinated.
So this was right after she talked about how many hundreds of millions of doses had been given worldwide, and there was great safety data, and so why should we think that kids are any different? I mean, why would we think there should be any difference in terms of age and potential issues associated with age?
Well, I think that first of all, I've never, in all the years that I've given vaccines, which has been a lot, I've never given a pediatric patient the same dose that I give an adult. But that's what we're doing during COVID. And maybe that has determined to be okay, but it just seems out of step compared to what we've traditionally done in the past. But I think more importantly, we have to remember that children or any pediatric patient, they are not little adults. They still have growth plates, and there's, organs are still, things are still happening there. Their frontal lobe of their brain, which has those amyloid proteins and folds where things get trapped if things break the blood-brain barrier, all of that is still forming.
And the immune system itself. I mean, this is stuff
right.
that basic biology. I mean, we know this. It's younger kids before puberty and all that have an extremely strong innate immune system as those kids build up their repertoire for their adaptive immune system. Right. And then that innate immune system backs down as you get older, so that you can rely more on your adaptive, because the innate immune system can go haywire sometimes, and we don't like that, obviously. So we know the immune system itself functions differently in kids, and she's out there saying, there's no reason. And this particular slide is again from the June 23rd CDC meeting, the ACIP meeting about myocarditis risks. And here's the data. It's right here. It's right in front of us. She just dismisses it as, well, yeah, we don't think there would be any reason to think that there might be some difference between how children react and how adults react. And yet here it is.
So typically
It's right.
with children, well, or young adults, they're traditionally more active. They're either outside playing or, they are involved in sports, whatever, but they just seem to be more active. Maybe not always, but when we look overall, we would expect them, because their metabolism is usually a little bit higher. So anytime you're exerting yourself after having a vaccine, specifically an mRNA vaccine, that puts you in a higher risk category for myocarditis and pericarditis, or even costochondritis, which can happen at, all those things can happen at any age. But when we look at the ages that we're going to see them and what precipitating factors will be with them, those are the things that we expect to see. Ironically enough, this same chart was also at the July 22nd ACIP meeting. And I don't know where you're at in your slides, because so we typically have myocarditis or pericarditis. Cases happen every year, regardless if there's COVID or not. So when they're looking at, is the vaccine increasing it, they look at how many cases do we typically have, and then how many cases do we have over top of that. And you did it by 7 days, or, well, they did it by 7 days.
Well, they did it by both. They did it by 21 days and by 7 days. But of course, when we are comparing, when we know, I didn't put this slide particularly in, but we see that most of the cases happened within 5 days of the dose. So using the 21-day window is a little bit excessive, and it's going to wash out our signal. So I chose the 7-day. They did do both.
Well, and then they presented July 22nd, that first chart that you showed, but then they extended it to 120 days.
What?
Yes, I sent that to you. No what? You should have looked. But anyway, so they said, oh, well, look, over 120 days, we only have this, so what then happens is you kind of wash, like you said, you wash those cases away. So their expectation, or their I can't even talk this evening. See what happens when I'm not supposed to be doing this, and then it happens. I apologize. But it was 4 to 6 cases over the expected amount.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah,
which means
the one
that. Which means that it's basically like saying this is not a big risk, because they're only expecting 4 to 6 on top of whatever is our normal number without COVID vaccines. And it was in the age group of, I believe it was, I can't tell you if it was 12 to 17. I believe they did 12 to 49 or something, like 12 to 29.
Yeah,
it
something
was
weird.
Right, it was a very skewed,
It made no sense. It was just, it was very.
So based on that, they felt, and it was even a lower number for the VIT and HIT. So based on that, they felt, well, this is so small. There's no reason why, even if you've had a history of myocarditis and pericarditis, there's nothing that says, if you look at benefit versus risk, that they can't have it. So they still anticipate individuals to be able to get it, because your risk is really so little. Now, I know personally that it's probably, no, it's an actual slide from 722.
That's what I have. I have that up. I have the session 3. So, and I think that's what you're talking about with BSD.
Yeah, it would.
The 12 to 39-year-olds that they decided.
It was 12 to 39, yeah, but that gave it through June 5th. Did you notice that?
Yes, they also limited the amount of time that they did it, which of course is interesting because we had very few 12 to 15-year-olds who could have had a second dose.
Right. And so that kind of went into the, well, there really isn't a benefit. And if you get the opportunity to actually watch the ACIP meeting, I would highly recommend that. But they also do kind of touch on that at the congressional hearing also, that says there really is no benefit to giving the vaccine, the one that is a 2 dose, prior to a 2 month period. But we don't want to confuse um, the public. So we're going to keep it at where it's at now, even though we know that that does, or that could potentially increase an event or a reaction. But because it's so small, it's fine. The other thing that was just really shocking was those with a history of GBS. Historically, if you've had GBS, regardless if it's from a vaccine or not, you just don't do it anymore. That's like get out of jail free card. You stay away from those because we know that it can stimulate that again. With these, they said, yes, there is an increase, but it's so small that as long as you did not have GBS as a direct result of the first uh, injection of
Yeah, of one
COVID,
of the mRNA or
right? Even if the cause was unknown, we don't know why you got GBS, or if it was some other vaccine, it's fine because this is so small. You can still get this too.
I mean,
And then,
it flies in the face of everything we have ever done before.
right, and I guess that's why, we kind because we were hearing all of these things and we're watching the data come through as the presentation is happening. And even though they're still giving smaller numbers than, and they say we believe these are underreported.
Yes, they do say
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So as they're saying that, and then they're giving smaller numbers where I'm going, gosh, that's really strange. I myself have seen more just on social media than that. But okay. And so they're still giving this information. And then for the recommendation to be, well, that's fine. It's so small when you look at your benefit versus risk.
Well,
We still
specifically,
think
what
that they
they
should
do
get
is
it.
they spread it all out, and
Right.
that's how they do it. When they narrow it down to specific groups, like I had shown before, where it was it is such a clear group of people that is at risk of myocarditis from the mRNA vaccines. Now, they don't even show older than
Mm-mm.
50-year-olds because they were so, they just didn't exist there. There were so few cases. So trying to say that the benefits outweigh the risks for everybody, just because it truly does, at least in terms of myocarditis for the 50-plus-year-olds, they are highly unlikely to get myocarditis, but they are the most likely to suffer severe effects from being infected with SARS-CoV-2. And it's exactly the opposite for the kids. Kids
Right.
are the least likely to suffer severe effects from SARS-CoV-2 infection, but at the highest risk of myocarditis as a result. But what the ACIP has been doing is they've been just kind of like smoothing it all out and saying, in general, if we average everyone together, the benefits
Mm-hmm.
outweigh the risks because we've increased the benefits by including the old people, and we've reduced the risks by including the old people. And it's just like,
Now,
this is not how we do this.
there was one age group in the older, and again, I'd have to look at that July 22nd, that did show like a sharp increase briefly um, of myocarditis. But if you look at how many vaccines were given, and we know that age group can definitely be affected. And then they did touch on the NIH, report that came out about the neurodegenerative disease and the immunocompromise. And I thought, okay, here we go. They're going to really use their brains, put on their thinking caps. This is a good plan. Here we go. This is fantastic. And so it was testified under oath by the FDA, the CDC. It's in the CDC's guidance, and also the NIH. All of them said, we know blunting occurs for the immunocompromised.
Can you explain blunting?
Yeah, so blunting is, I think of it as blunt force trauma. So if I punch you in your chest, that's a blunt force trauma. I'm not stabbing you with something. I'm not, using a firearm. It's just blunt force, maybe hitting a brick wall head on or a glass door. Boom, it's blunt. So what happens when you have a blunting effect with a vaccine is you expect it to spike up, and then your ceiling is where your optimal response would be. Well, because you're immunocompromised for whatever reason, maybe you're taking medication for that, it acts as just that brick wall. So when you take a vaccine and instead of going to that ceiling, it stops at that brick wall and it blunts and it can't go any further. You can't achieve the optimal effect.
Blunting is basically when you have some kind of restriction on your ability to create antibodies in a way that other people normally could. Whether it's because it's internal genetic, you just don't, you're one of those non-responders, or you're taking a medication that prevents the creation of antibodies.
Right. So, and then so that's blunting, but the other thing that they see with the immunocompromised people is it's just not working.
Yep.
And so
it's logical.
Right.
This makes sense.
Right. It's acting as like a gatekeeper. So that gate comes down, or you're stepping on that water hose and you're not allowing that messenger RNA to get where it needs to go to tell the body to have the response that it should have. So they said, yes, we do know that this is happening. Even after two doses, the immunocompromised are not responding as we feel that they should. So I'm like, yay, this is what they're going to say. They're going to say, these are the ones that should hold off, because the NIH study says we need some better data and some clinical direction before that we do this. However, there is a vaccine in production that should be available in about 5 years that may be better for these neurodegenerative, elderly, and immunocompromised. So I know this is what they're doing. I'm ready to, cheer. And they said, okay, so what we need to do is consider a third dose.
Yeah. So
and I could have heard a pin drop.
It doesn't work. The first 2 doses don't work. So let's do a third dose on people that we know it doesn't work, and they already have an immune system that is not functioning as it should, and have already a predisposition towards things like autoimmunity, to autoinflammatory conditions, all these things that repeated inflammatory events like a vaccination with mRNA can cause in itself. And so their answer is essentially, well, we're just going to, and this is the theme. This is, again, the theme of the ODH. And I have a couple other clips, and we should probably keep moving on here.
Sorry.
But in terms of there's just so much assumption going on here. They are saying things because they feel it in some way, or they manipulate the data. They show the data in such a way that it sounds reasonable. Like they're saying, oh yeah, if you average it all out, the benefits outweigh the risks, and there's no reason to believe there's a difference between adults and children. When the data, when you look at it, it's clear there's a difference. We know there's a difference, and yet they tell us that what we are seeing and what they themselves are showing doesn't actually exist. So they went from talking about the vaccines and how fabulous these vaccines are, and no reason to worry about it. They're totally safe. They've been around forever, and all these things that they've said. And then they went to time to scare people. It's time to scare people specifically about children, because that's who we're now focused on, because we're starting to head towards school. So we gotta make people really afraid, because we have a year and a half or more than a year and a half of experience now, all of us with our lying eyes, seeing children be fine. And we can't be allowed to believe what our eyes are telling us. So we need to have them tell us what's really up.
And I have treated kids with Miss C, and I will tell you, it's scary. I will never forget our first patients that rolled in last spring with Miss C, and just this overwhelming feeling of, I have no idea what I'm doing. But it's become very clear that most kids with Miss C are very, very sick. The majority of them end up in the ICU. Many of them end up on breathing machines. And in order to treat them, to save them, we have to treat them with just massively high doses of steroids, and massive high doses of immune suppressive drugs to get the inflammation under control, to get the kids healthy again. And we have no idea what the long-term complications of that might be. And if you look at the rates of Miss C in kids, again, we're talking somewhere in the about 0.5% to 1%, about 1% of kids who get COVID will go on to have Miss C.
Whoa, that's terrifying. 0.5% to 1% of kids who've got COVID have Miss C. They've developed Miss C, according to her. That's terrifying.
I guess my thing. So what is Miss C?
Can I show my numbers first, and then we'll talk
I'm
about
sorry.
it?
Yeah, go ahead. My bad.
Yes. So we're terrified. I mean, you hear that and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so terrifying. Let's freak out, right? I did a quick look, and I just looked at Ohio. We have about 155,000 children, or those under the age of 20, 0 to 19-year-olds, because that's how Ohio breaks it down. We can't see any more granular than that. So 155,000 cases, and this is again from the June 23rd. So it's a little limited in its time frame. What we're looking at here is to the national surveillance as of June 2nd. We're looking at 4,000 total Miss C cases. Now, how does that square? I mean, the numbers the numbers she's throwing out there are absolutely ridiculous. I mean, they're obviously wrong. We're nowhere near 0.5% to 1% of Miss C cases. The other thing I wanted to comment on with that one, before you talk about what is Miss C, she's an infectious disease specialist.
Yes.
She doesn't know what Miss C is. I understand that. I can understand why an infectious disease specialist would be terrified by Miss C, because that's not where they're in it.
They should be. They should be called in for consult too. It should be rheumatology as well as infectious disease, just for consult. And then of course there should be definitely a couple other ones called in for that rheumatology for sure.
Rheumatology, number one, yeah. And not only rheumatology, but you've got, I mean, I don't know how many of the viewers, I don't think any at all understand that what Miss C is. It's multi-system inflammatory syndrome in children. What it is your immune system starts attacking your own organs because there are insufficient anti-inflammatory cytokines. You have inflammatory cytokines and you have anti-inflammatory cytokines. If you don't have enough anti-inflammatory to bring down the inflammatory, you have an out of control inflammatory system that your body is attacking your own organs. And that's why they use high doses of steroids and try to shut down your immune system. This is not an out of control infection. It is an out of control immune reaction. And the interesting thing part with both Carrie and I is we both have daughters that have a disease that one of the worst outcomes from it is a very similar situation. I mean, it's like, this is an out of control, out of balanced immune reaction. This is not something caused by specifically the virus. This is more, quite frankly, intrinsic in the person experiencing it rather than intrinsic to the virus. It's terrifying. It's scary. It's pray. If it happens, pray. Do steroids, shut down the immune system, and pray. But it is more intrinsic to the person experiencing rather than that virus itself.
Right. And a lot of times you don't even realize that they, had a virus, and then they end up, getting that. So my thing was MISC made its debut in 2020. Prior to that, it was called, it's a very similar disease that mimics or mirrors MISC is called Kawasaki's disease.
Mm-hmm.
And for a patient presenting with these symptoms, the biggest difference is their platelet count. Though that is the biggest difference that, if you're like, well, which one is it? Is it Kawasaki's or is it MISC? The quickest way to give you an idea of which to point to, which one is, because your CRP, your C-reactive protein, which is inflammatory test, as well as your SED rate, they're going to be elevated in both. The CD8, which the
inflamed.
Yeah, right. The CD8 test, which takes a while. A lot of times that's even a reference test, depending on your facility. If it's a rural facility versus like a big academic facility, it may take some time to get back. But a platelet count you can do in-house. Every facility can. And one of them, the platelets are either normal, and the other one, the platelets are dropping. So those are so if they're not sure which one it is, and they don't want to wait for the CD8 test to come back, they will say, what are the platelets doing? And then watch them in another 6 hours and see what the platelets are doing at that time. And they'll either call it MISC or Kawasaki's based on that. And the treatment is the same.
No difference in treatment. You shut down the immune system as quickly as possible.
Right. And that's the biggest thing. Yeah, because both of them go into a cytokine storm. We have, it's not fun to watch a Kawasaki's disease case. Nobody wants to see their child sick. But adults can get that too. We've heard with COVID or with anything, an adult can get a cytokine storm. An adult can get Kawasaki's. If they have MISC, we don't call it MISC. We call it MISA for adult. So, this isn't, I'm not negating it at all, but these are things that we've seen, and we know if something has turned the immune system on and we don't even know what it is, and it is affecting their vital organs or their lymphatic system or whatever to a astronomical point, the first thing we need to do is shut that system off. It's turned on. It's not turning off. And then you have to, and then you have to slowly start turning it back on to provide homeostasis.
Yep. It's a misregulation.
Right.
And we don't understand it. I mean, the best people, again, as we had mentioned, are the rheumatologists, because they're one of the few groups of doctors that actually see it on a more regular basis. And I remember very early on, I remember there was a rheumatologist, a pediatric rheumatologist, I think maybe back in April or May of 2020, who did a video talking about using anakinra. And I'm just like, that sounds like a smart idea. And
So
I've never heard anything more since. And I'm just sitting here going, why? Why not? This is something, we've had this drug for a long time. It's these diseases have a similar series of events. It might involve slightly different, cytokines. It might be different cells, but it's the same overall process, same reaction. And I've never heard anything more from him. And it's just like,
so he's actually in the same office as my daughter's rheumatologist.
oh, for real?
Yeah, so
Oh,
if I can't,
nice.
if we couldn't get her into hers, then we would go see him. And the only reason why I recall that clip is because that is the trial that my daughter was in back when she was a preteen, well, adolescent, I guess you would call it. Um, and that medication worked to turn her system off. And she stayed at a very good rate for 5 years. And then she had a relapse, and it's honestly been not fun since. But at the end of that trial, that medication was not approved for pediatrics with of her weight at the with the juvenile rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. And then once they switched what they were calling it from juvenile rheumatoid arthritis to
Them
SJA, or yeah,
changing names
right.
changes.
Then she could use
Yeah.
that as off label now that she's an adult. But so, and that was my concern when she was very ill. And we've seen kids, this last year that have been very ill and not treated because they were waiting for a COVID result. And then they end up with Kawasaki's disease. A lot of those that were believed initially to be MISC ended up being Kawasaki's once they went back and were able to look at it. And it wasn't from COVID. It was because they were waiting on that COVID result. And here they had strep. Strep is
And there's no
very...
Oh, yeah, strep is a very different thing. Then you can use an antibiotic. That's a different animal. And this whole
right.
obsession with that these things are limited only to COVID is nonsense. It really
Right.
is. And they keep pushing this idea that it's something new. No, it's not. I mean, both of us have in completely non-infectious situations are also
Right.
aware of it. And rheumatologists are aware of it. And here we have an infectious disease specialist saying, oh, I'm so terrified of it, I didn't know what to do. Well, maybe you should go down the hall and talk to the rheumatologist.
Right. Is there another clip that we have? I know that we have a couple questions there, but I didn't want to interrupt your clips.
Oh yeah. It might not be. I mean, I don't know which questions. I'm not good at multitasking. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for your clips to be done, and I have them marked, and then we'll go back. Jim, I see you, and I will answer that question.
Yes, we need to hurry up so we can discuss the deadly Delta. I mean, we talk too much. That's the problem.
It is. Yeah.
So
I'm going to mute myself.
Don't mute yourself. Where is it? So here's one that's so. This one just I didn't even know what to say with it. This is Dr. Vanderhoff again doing his try to terrify everyone.
Some, as we've discussed, suffer some severe health outcomes. Let's remember the hundreds of Ohio children who have suffered long and debilitating hospitalizations with MISC.
So we're again focused on the hundreds of children, Ohio children with MIS-C, and we have completely ignored any other condition, the myocarditis, all of the neurological issues and all that. No, we must focus on those hundreds of kids who had MIS or MIS-C. It was just one of those clips where it's just.
But the vaccine can cause that too. So I mean, you're at
the vaccine. So here you go. This is you perfectly segued for me here, because it was this situation where I just went, my head exploded. The third doctor here. I would like to say I can't. Somebody had posted in here what her name was, and I'd like to say that she was involved in the clinical trials for children at Cincinnati Children's. So when you listen to what she says here, please keep that in mind, Carrie.
And Similarly, I would say to families, I've never seen a child damaged from a COVID vaccine. I have seen children significantly damaged by COVID.
Well, COVID's been around longer than the vaccine has, so I don't know. Is she a practicing physician? What the heck is she?
Yes, I think she's
where?
also. I think she's also infectious disease specialist, but I believe she was deeply involved in the clinical trials for Pfizer at Cincinnati Children's.
Oh, it's Cincinnati. Okay. Are you
That
really?
one, those trials.
Oh, and so who was at Cincinnati Children's that has been, I mean, we've seen her all over, that was affected by Pfizer,
But
her
no,
parent.
ever son damaged by the queens.
Well, then maybe she was off that day. I don't know. Maybe she was off and she didn't see her. Maybe she closed her eyes. I have no idea. But that is, again, when you do a blanket, and I think that's my issue with this whole situation, when you do a blanket statement like safe and effective for all, or never seen it, well, maybe you haven't seen it, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Just because you won't look at it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So our viewers know what we're referring to. What's her last name? It's Maddie. I can't remember her last name. I can't. And you talked to the family, I believe, at some point, didn't you?
I think it was another one of. Oh gosh, Maddie was part of the CCHMC study. Okay, yeah.
The Cincinnati Children's
Hospital Medical Center. Okay.
So that's fascinating, isn't it? Never seen any child harmed by the COVID vaccine trials. So
as her parent, you know, if I was watching that as her parent, I can't imagine what they're going through or feeling after hearing that, because they need heard and they need validated, because it's happened. You know, you don't ignore it. It can't be fixed now. Once you're vaxxed, you can't be unvaxxed, but don't disregard.
And this again, just because she doesn't want to see it or acknowledge it doesn't mean that it isn't happening. There's harm happening. You can argue about the scale. You can argue about an individual's personal risk benefit, but to blanket make that statement, I mean, it concerns me greatly, especially where we know that there were things that happened during those trials at Cincinnati Children's, and that they're just dismissed and it never happened. And I mean, that's why we are where we are, I would say.
That's unfortunate.
So, yeah, well, so kind of in that same vein about trusting what they are telling us, and what is safe, and that kind of situation. Now, Dr. Vanderhoff was talking in the middle of this, talking about how hard it can be to schedule appointments for vaccinations when it's summertime and there's lots of activities and all that. So they have a solution for busy parents.
COVID-19 vaccines can be administered concurrently with other back-to-school immunizations.
No, the CDC
based on what evidence?
Actually, the CDC has said no. They just said that July 22nd. They did, yeah. It's on that. They don't want those administered at this time because there's no data to show that that's okay. So they need to wait 14 days in between, which, but yeah, they said no. And her answer was, we know that we're really behind on, there was 3 major vaccines that are typical childhood vaccines. So she said, we know that we're missing, it was like 20,000 for 1, 30 and 60. So she said, we have given states money so they can, and I'm not a fan of this term either, but I'm sure you will appreciate it. So we can figure out, the state can figure out how to circle back to get those kids for their regular childhood vaccines. So
But
there has to.
CDC has straight out said, don't give them concurrently, while our chief medical officer straight out said, do it.
Right.
Do
Yes.
it. No, we've got a problem with inflammation when you are giving vaccinations, especially this particular one involves severe inflammation. When we're talking about fevers and nausea, vomiting, aching, and myocarditis, all of these things are results of inflammation of some variety, and then you are going to put in more vaccines on top of it, which can create more inflammation.
But if you're not sure, if you really need, for whatever reason, if you're the one that's developed this, and this is, you have a lot of financial security riding on this, what better way
Then to
than
blame it on something else.
Right. Because you can't definitively say at that point that it's the COVID-19 vaccine. And our criteria is so stringent just for a vaccine adverse reaction and death, that if you were to add that in as well, that it skews it too much. You have too many unknowns to know which one that it was. But I I choose to believe that those that are making these decisions are for the best interest of our children and our society. However, every time that I hold on to that, Ohio proves me wrong, our leadership does, every time they open their mouth and somebody puts a camera on their face. And I don't know if it's because if it's done on purpose or if it's like they just are a parrot. So I don't know what it is, or why it is that way, but it's really disappointing. But the CDC did say and testified under oath, they know that they are behind, but because there is not enough data to say that it is okay or it is not okay to give concurrently, that they are recommending, or they gave money to each state. Like Ohio got $31 million, and then Columbus got another 3.4, so that they have the ability to circle back to those kids after their first dose of COVID vaccine, so they can make sure they hit their regular vaccines, and then again for their second COVID vaccine. And if they're immunocompromised, a third. And if they had the J&J and they're immunocompromised, then they're going to hit them with either the Pfizer or Moderna for the second.
So the next one, I mean,
sorry.
no, it's good. I hope we need to. I mean, there's so much to say, and there's just so many lies that they say. So this next clip, and actually it goes along with, I was looking at the comments there, and I like, is it showing up here?
It is showing up, and he's also, Jim, I see you. I promise we're going to get to it.
But I mean, this is an extremely good point here, okay? So every scientist knows only make one change at a time for a study. Now, listen, anybody with a scientist brain here, listen to what Dr. Vanderhoff is claiming here and try to justify it in a scientific sense.
That we are seeing increases in cases that are fairly remarkable. We've had a doubling just in about 2 weeks. But while we are seeing increases in hospitalizations, we're not seeing the same pace of increase of hospitalizations. And why is that? Well, fortunately, when we look at the population 18 and older in Ohio, almost 60% of them are vaccinated. And we look at 65 and older, it's more than 80% are vaccinated. So what I would say is that vaccination is working. And I would encourage people to get into the group that is protected through vaccines, because that seems the safest option. So
non sequitur after non sequitur after non sequitur. I mean, it's just like, okay, we've had an increase in cases, but because older than 65 is super vaccinated, then the lower hospitalizations, so get your vaccine.
I guess my thing is just if I'm going to say I'm no science brain at all, I'm going to turn it off. And if I see the rate of vaccinations are going up and the rate of cases are going up, what am I going to think?
So here's an interesting one. I'm still working on this graph, trying to I'll probably add something. I have all of this data county-wide as well, and how to chew it up, how to present it in a way that is accessible by most people. And this is kind of my first experiment kind of with this one here. Any feedback on whether this makes sense or not. I just picked 2 counties in the state of Ohio. These are just cases. I should do it with the hospitalizations too, now that I'm thinking of it and listening to that clip. 2 counties. Delaware County, which is our most highly vaccinated county. I believe it's somewhere around 63, 68, 8%, at least with the first dose, somewhere in that range. So high for the state of Ohio. Holmes County is, of course, Amish Central. And I believe they're at about 15% out 1 dose or more, 1 or more doses. Okay, so we're talking about a difference of 63, 68% to 15%. Now, of course, these counties are different sizes. Delaware County is right next to Franklin County. It's kind of suburbia of Columbus. We're looking at around, I believe, around 200,000 people in that county. And in Holmes County, I believe we're roughly around 50,000 people in that county. So it's a factor of 4 difference. Okay, cool. The blue are the Delaware County cases, and this is just going back to January again. I'm just playing with this in the moment just before we started all this. These are the times when the first vaccines would start kicking in, and we can barely even see Holmes County, and actually you can really barely see it down here. But if you go in, if I can go in, no, it won't let me. Way down in the corner down here, there's a couple cases from Holmes County.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Delaware is going back up again.
Right, because Holmes County, Wayne County,
yep,
Southern Lorain County,
Geauga
some of Ashland County. They said, well, I don't know about Geauga, but those four counties, they said find a new cause. COVID is over, and we're moving forward. Period.
Well, they stopped. And that's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, you don't see any of what he's saying here. He's making all these assumptions that lower hospitalizations must mean because vaccinations work. But if you go and you look and you challenge this concept, saying that, okay, if this is true, then we should see a difference between our most vaccinated county and our least vaccinated county. We should see that happening. We should see Delaware having fewer cases than Holmes County, and that's not at all what we're seeing. We're not seeing it at all. Even though these are not scaled. I mean, I might want to do it by 100,000s just so I could, because it's about the motion of it, not the absolute value. But it's not working. It doesn't work that way. And yet they continue to repeat and repeat and repeat this same concept where they have decided that this is how it is, and so therefore this is how it is. And they don't only do one direction. So there were a couple more comments here, since again we're talking school time, school children, all those kinds of things, where they talk about transmission, because again, we know that masks are coming for kids. We all know that. We know vaccines are coming for kids. The writing is very clearly on the wall. So we have Dr. Vanderhoff saying this.
Children get sick from COVID-19. They spread it to others.
They spread it to others. They do. They are the big spreaders, and we need to be afraid of them. Meanwhile, you've got Dr. Amy Edwards on the exact same press conference say
the vast majority of pediatric cases are from adult exposures. While kids can spread COVID child to child, that's less common than adult to child transmission. So if all the adults in a child's life are vaccinated, then that child's risk of acquiring COVID is exceedingly low.
So we didn't hear what we heard or I did. I heard the vast majority of pediatric cases for
Oh,
her.
it didn't play the rest of it?
No, it like skipped. It was like a scratchy vinyl record, how it skips.
All right, I'll give it another try. It's pretty short.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find it.
The vast majority of pediatric cases are from adult exposures. While kids can spread COVID child to child, that's less common than adult to child transmission. So if all the adults in a child's life are vaccinated, then that child's risk of acquiring COVID is exceedingly low.
So that is a prime example of Ohio is embarrassing. Our leadership is embarrassing. They're not even in the same book, much less the same page or same chapter. Like we have
On the
to do
same
better.
press conference.
Right.
I mean, in the same press conference, they both say that child to child transmission doesn't happen, and it's not child to adult, it's adult to child. And then in the same press conference, no, children can spread it.
And we know, if you look at the laboratory data on the CDC footnote for lab services pages, that traditionally a child's viral load is much lower than the adult's viral load. So I don't understand what they're doing. Like they need to have a kumbaya, come to Jesus meeting and decide what narrative are we going to do today, because that is awful that was on the same press conference. There's no wonder that Ohio or the public, their confidence is shot with all of them. There is none.
That's the beauty of the system here, because they are playing both sides. They are playing the sides that children are at risk from the teachers. That's why teachers need to be all vaccinated. And then they turn around and they say, children are vectors, so they all need to be vaxxed. What? I mean, you can't have it both ways. That's not how it works, but that's how Ohio works.
Right. It's really disappointing.
It's extremely frustrating. To finish out my video stuff, since we've taken forever in a day on it, but I mean, it's just like
it's Kathryn's fault. You guys blame her. Send her an Instagram.
I'm just gonna let that one go. To finish this beautiful thing out, and I'm gonna allow Dan DeRose to finish it fully out, but I'm gonna, they really, they tell us, the vaccines are totally safe. They're been around forever. It's all good. It's just paperwork. Be scared of Miss C. That's very scary. Don't worry about any side effects. It's all good. Well, it seems that hospitalizations are controlled by vaccinations because we want to feel that way, whatever. And the final thing is, you will get sick. So let's hear it from Dr. Vanderhoff first. What's going to happen to us bad people?
I think that we can anticipate that over the coming months, people who have not yet been infected with COVID-19, people who have not received a vaccine, are almost certainly going to be infected with COVID-19 due to the Delta variant and its level of infectiousness. So it is really now just a matter of time. It is when, not if, an unvaccinated individual develops COVID-19. And as we've looked at how the Delta variant has behaved, it has moved through the unvaccinated populations of countries. And so I think it's a time when we're redoubling our efforts to encourage people in Ohio to take advantage of this wonderful option that we have, which is protection with the vaccines. It's excellent protection. It is safe protection. It is certainly a much better option than running the risk of getting COVID-19.
So that's Dr. Vanderhoff's take. Let's listen to Dr. Amy Edwards.
You will get sick from COVID. This Delta variant is contagious. And if you look even in states and countries where the vaccination rate's in the 70 and plus percent, this variant is so contagious that it's finding all those little pockets of tiny unvaccinated groups and it's making them sick. And we have much larger pockets than some of those other places. So there's no doubt about it. Now that the Delta variant is here, you will get sick from COVID. So take this opportunity before it's gotten too bad to get vaccinated to protect yourself.
So I thought for his the beginning
Finding
was,
all this.
yeah, for his the beginning was very spot on. I mean, he said, if you have not had COVID
Yeah, he did say that.
and aren't vaccinated, then, well, guess what? If I haven't had chickenpox and I'm not vaccinated against chickenpox and I'm in a room with a bunch of people with chickenpox, I might get chickenpox.
And I have great news here as well. I mean, when I heard that, I'm like, hey, this is fantastic. We don't have to go to any other letter of the Greek alphabet. If we're all going to get Delta,
Well,
we're done.
so
It's over.
that
Well, except for the vaccinated, they're a different story. But the unvaccinated among us, all right, Delta's it. If they're so convinced that if we haven't gotten it yet, we haven't gotten vaccinated, then we're going to get Delta. Then we're going to get Delta. But I love her commentary that all those little pockets of unvaccinated are definitely going to get hit by that. Okay, sure, if you say so. Yeah. And of course, Dan DeRose, who is Channel 19, which is Cleveland area. His commentary at the end of this particular broadcast, because I watched the Channel 19 version of it, was, well, you guys get to see it and appreciate this here. I hope. Wait, where is it? I didn't load it.
Oh, that's okay, because I can't handle him tonight.
Well, I'll do it, but we can move on to the Delta variant and the testing before Jim angry at us.
And I know it's late, and we've taken a lot of your time, and I appreciate those that have sticking around. So I'm going to go through it quick. So first of all, there is a difference between contagious and infectious. That's not number one. And I think we need to make sure that we understand the difference of it's more contagious, it's more contagious, it's more contagious versus it's more infectious, it's more infectious, it's more infectious. What is...
Well, not only that, more virulent is the bigger issue. They like to conflate contagiousness with virulence, and they do this all the time. They talk, I mean, I didn't cut a lot of it out, but a lot of this press conference was about how contagious the Delta variant is, and it's so super contagious it requires less of the virus to actually infect a person, et cetera, et cetera. That's what they said, but that's what they kept repeating again and again, and they implied, and they actually, I think, straight out said as well, that if you the more people who get it, then more people will end up hospitalized. So they're assuming that the severity of disease remains the same, which in all history of our understanding of how viruses evolve in new populations is exactly the opposite. The virulence does not remain the same. Contagiousness goes up and virulence goes down. That is how they always worked. And yet they are still, they are presenting it as contagiousness went up, which is as is expected. But they're ignoring the second half, which is virulence goes down. Yeah. And they're leaving your imagination to believe and fill in the gaps of fear. I think the second thing that keeps coming up about the Delta variant that we should definitely cover here as well is the question of testing. I have seen so many comments talking about, you know, how can we even test for the variant if we don't have a test for the virus itself, et cetera. Well, how do you get that test? And do you want to take that?
You can't walk in and just get it. Yeah. So you can't walk in and just get it. So you have to actually, here's what happens. So first of all, the federal government has said we need to have surveillance of how far this Delta variant is spreading, which is fine. We do that all the time. We do it every year for flu. We do it for several things. So in order to have that done, they took the populations and said each state based on population is required to send X amount of specimens to the CDC every week. For Ohio, it's 17 a week. And then there is a little blurb in there that says if you can't make the 17 this week, the 17 minimum specimen, so if you send more, that's okay. Because if you haven't packaged it right or there's not enough material or whatever the situation, then you can still meet your 17. So if you send 25 and only 17 are good, great. But if you send 17 and only 10 are good, now you have to make up that extra 7 that next week to send. So 17 quality specimens per week. So what happens is, say I'm sick. I do not feel good. I have symptoms. That right there is the very first thing. You have to have symptoms. And you go to the doctor and they swab you. So we can do variant
Only
ID.
for PCR.
Well,
Only
hold
for
on.
PCR.
That's a little bit different. So we can do the it's called a deep nasal or NP nasal pharynx, or we can do a oral pharynx. So an NP or an OP for this. But it has to be, if you have an antigen test, then it has to have a reflective PCR test. And for NP, it's 18 to 20 cycles. For OP, it is 28 or less. Because obviously the
You're not
saliva and things, right. So that's the first thing. You have to test positive.
First, you have to you have to have a PCR test. If you go and you must have symptoms. So no asymptomatic tests can be used. Second, you cannot have only an antigen test, which in the state of Ohio loves to give antigen tests and only antigen tests because they're testing people in nursing homes and
but that's against our
can't do that.
Right.
All of those antigen tests, all those probable cases, unless they are reflex with a PCR test, that means they take a PCR test at the exact same time. Those don't count. So all of those antigen cases cannot be sequenced. And then if you have a PCR test that is done with symptoms, you must have a cycle threshold count of 18 to 20.
For NP.
At a maximum for the nasal one, and under 28 for the oral one, which in the state of Ohio, I believe we still have PCR tests that are being run at up to, I think, around 45 cycles. A lot of ours are still in the 40 cycle range as far as I understand. So we're talking about a situation where all of these cases that we're seeing popping up constantly cannot be run for the genomic sequencing, either because they're done with an antigen test only, they are done without symptoms, or their cycle threshold is much too high because these people are not actually, they do not have a high enough viral load for the genomic sequencing.
Right, for variant identification, because those are two separate tests. So ideally what we like to have is whatever specimen tested positive on PCR, then that specimen then will get packaged in a very specific way. We have to have an O-ring, and you have to watch the transport media because some transport media will nullify it. So there's a very specific process that has to be followed. So I'm sick. I don't feel good. It is Thursday. I go to the doctor and I'm sick. And they do a PCR test at 18 cycles for my NP. It comes back positive. That
you
is
are for
good.
real sick with
I'm for
COVID.
real. Yeah, that's a good quality specimen. Then to fill out the form, that it's a special form that all labs have, package it correctly if they're following instructions, and then it gets sent from there to Ohio Department of Health. Ohio Department of Health then puts it on a it's called shipping papers, and so it's packaging and transport where they de-identify it. And then from that point, that specimen is sent every Monday. So all facilities are sending them to ODH once a week within 7 days. Then ODH for our state is Mondays, 17 specimens minimum get overnighted to the CDC stat lab. Once they're at the CDC stat lab, then the process of genome sequencing or variant identification or both start to happen. A lot of times, if the specimen isn't a good specimen for the identification of the variant, or if it's a variant that we don't have noted, then that is a good specimen to reflex to genome sequencing, because we want to see what gene is scrubbed, or which, what's happening with this, because this is something that we haven't seen. So that process takes about 2 to 4 weeks to get the results back. So then those results go back to the ODH. But then remember, it's been de-identified. So then the ODH has to look it up, see who that belongs to, and then let them know. Again, genome sequencing and variant identification were never meant to be a diagnostic procedure, and that's not what we're using them for. So if somebody is going to the doctor on Friday and they have a positive test on Saturday, they do not know that that is a Delta variant.
So that's
That
the
is
other thing.
impossible.
It is impossible. So this is, I didn't pull this thing up, and I should have the variant proportions, the CDC page where they're showing the variant proportions. I might be able to pull it up while I'm talking. So one of the things to keep in mind when you listen to what we just said here, first of all, you need to have symptoms. Second of all, you need to have a PCR test. It needs to be done correctly. It needs to have a certain, you need to have enough on board to you're actually genuinely sick with COVID. That's the disease. That's the virus that's causing your problem. That's what the 18 to 20 cycle threshold, or 28 if it's in your mouth and all that kind of stuff. That if you have those kinds of numbers, yeah, that virus is the one that's making you genuinely sick in that moment. So you are sick, all these things, but we are good. I got it up. So this is what the CDC is showing in terms of, and this is not just in Ohio, this is all over the country, in terms of, these are the rules in terms of what has to come in to the CDC in order to get symptomatic PCR tests, low cycle thresholds. Now in the state of Ohio, we can't even manage to scrape together 300 of these samples to send to the CDC over a 4-week period out of over 11 million people. And I actually should have checked exactly how many tests we've been giving in that time period. And we see here that big dark orange thing. That's the Delta variant. Yeah, oh yeah, all of those samples, those are the Delta variant. But those are only symptomatic, low cycle threshold PCR tests. That does not tell us who is testing positive when it comes to antigen tests, who is testing positive when it comes to high cycle thresholds. Are those even real cases? And so what they're doing is they're conflating the few numbers of true Delta variant cases with the large number of cases that we are counting. But it is not clear that those two groups actually intersect.
So I would, for the, can you put up the page that you have that from? Is it the COVID data tracker? It should be.
Yes, I
Which,
should be able to.
well, I just want to
Just a
see.
second.
No, I just want to put up, if you will, the heading for that.
Let's see here if I can do it. There it is. And
I'm going to ask you to scroll too, if you can, because
yep, I can do that.
I think it's really important for people. Okay, so what is the heading on it? Just because I can't. I'm old.
Variant proportions.
Okay, so you're at variant proportions.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because let me get. I just want to get to where I am, or where you are, so we can see. So, is this the? Okay, so this one right here. Stop. Right where you were at. This right here. The, oh, you can't see where I'm pointing. The map, and you see like pies and things.
Yep.
That, if you read at the top, and I think some people aren't catching that, that's a trajectory. That is not, this is where we're expected to be. This is what we expect to see.
Oh.
Yeah. And I don't think people catch that. What is
I did not
important is if you scroll down to the very bottom of that page and it
This
says
part here?
unweighted proportions. Right.
Yeah.
So, and it says variant proportions are based on representative CDC sequence data collected over 4 weeks, ending July 3rd, for states with at least 300 sequences. So Ohio did not even put in, and again, they're only required to send 17. But if it's growing that fast and there's so much going across the state of Ohio, we should be like we were the last time. The last
300.
4 weeks, over 300. And so where are our specimens? Because I'm hearing Ohio leadership say that this is bad and it's growing fast, but I'm not seeing the data that reflects that.
So I think one of the key things going on here is a question of testing as well, because they're increasing in testing. But just because you increase in testing, it doesn't mean that these people are actively ill. And that's the other key thing as well, is that are these people actively ill? Do they have symptoms? Are they taking a PCR test? Are they taking an antigen test? Is the PCR popping positive at a high enough, at a low enough cycle threshold that actually indicates disease? Because the other thing to keep in mind is we are constantly surrounded by pathogens at all times.
Right.
We have pathogens in our body, in our nasal passages, in our mucus,
in our skin,
in our skin all the time, and it's always there. And if there are people around you who are genuinely sick, because we're moving into a season of more illness, genuine, even with COVID, there will be more of that virus in the air. And if you breathe it in, it will get in your mucus, and you might be completely immune to it, or your innate immune system can handle it, or whatever it is. You will test positive, but you might not be sick because you've experienced it before. You can fight it off, and there's no big deal. And that's the biggest issue we're definitely going to be dealing with in this wintertime, is there will be people testing positive because they're breathing this in, but it is not necessarily going to be making them ill.
Right. And so when you're looking at the CDC, and maybe that's the issue, maybe when Dr. Vanderhoff is looking at the CDC website to quote these things, he's not reading the description because it's very clear. And I really would hope that anyone that's looking at that will definitely look at, like, this would be a pie chart. And so that's called now cast on. It's a 2-week interval, and it's they're selected in the dashboard controls. Each pie chart represents the point estimation and associated prediction. That would be the pie chart. The one for the bar chart is the same It's a nowcast proportion of the most common SARS-CoV-2 lineages grouped at the national level or selected for the HHS region. And again, it's a projected amount. That's what we feel that we will see. That's what should happen. Those trajectory analysis, darn them, they need to get their stuff together.
Modelers. Remember how we got into this in the first place?
Right.
Modeler.
Yeah.
That's where we are, people. Modeling.
Right. And so I just, because I do want to make sure that people are looking at that, and so they can make sure that they do pay attention, because the true, raw, unweighted data for this particular page is at the very, very bottom. Next, real quick, and then I'm going to be done. Yeah, that portion right there is there's been a lot of what is happening with this CDC testing that's being pulled back. So
yes.
So
the CDC PCR test that over the last couple of days I've gotten that message like 1,000 times as well, and I know you have as well, where people are talking about, oh, the CDC's their test has failed to gain approval, et cetera, et cetera. No, that's not what's happened.
Right. So any lab that has something, the CDC can't sell it. They are an agency. They are not a
commercial company.
Right. So if you just ask yourself, when was the last time I purchased a CDC product? When was the last time the CDC sold me something? No, probably not, because it's never happened. You'll hear FDA approved or whatever, but the CDC doesn't sell things. So the CDC had developed a test way back when, and they shipped it out to different labs or different facilities for them to use. They're due for renewal of EUA in December, and they said, no, there's enough of them out there now that it's not beneficial to the CDC to just to just keep supplying them for free. It's not. So we call this shelf or sell or shelf. So they either have to sell it to a lab, and then that lab can put their brand on it, and then that lab can sell it, or they can't. They shelf it. They're done, but they're not going to continue to just give them out for free. That's not going to happen. That doesn't mean that it didn't meet a standard, regardless of my personal opinion about it. That doesn't mean that it did not meet a standard. That does not mean that it is, been revoked. That means they're not going to continue to file that application or a renewal, because it's time to do something different. Because we do have other options. So they put out the release to the labs to say, hey, we're now July. You have until December 31st to use everything that you have of ours, and contract with another company to get your supplies. Maybe it's Abbott, maybe it's Quest, maybe it's LabCorp, maybe it's one we've never heard of. But if they were to sell, if the CDC went down the route of selling it versus shelving it. So that's that one. The other one is there is a separate test that was removed from circulation. It was done July 15th. But we knew it's the same situation. We knew it was coming in December. So they sent out I think it was December, January, something like that, the press and that said, hey, if you're going to use this test, you might want to confirm it with a different test, because we're going to pull it come July 15th. So I think it's really important that we look at these EUAs for what they are, and then think to yourself, especially if it's a CDC product, because we're going to see a lot of this happening with different CDC reagents and things, because we're over a year in. It's time to something or
Have
get off
something.
the pot.
Yeah.
Like, we need to be making some arrangements, because COVID isn't leaving. It's not going to go anywhere. But how much attention we choose to pay it, we choose to give it, that's a different story. But just like, the flu has never went away. I don't know what's going to happen with flu season this year. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can't imagine that it's going to be mild. So, but that's where we are with those. But if anybody has ever purchased a CDC product, can you please let me know, because I did not get any type of bonus or anything, and I'm kind of upset about it.
But so everybody understands, this stuff that's been going on, spreading all over the place about this, the test, the CDC test. No, there's nothing that the FDA hasn't said, no, this is a bad product. It's just very simply the CDC is no longer going to continue with it. It unfortunately, as much as we would love it to be the case that that there's an issue, there is not. That is not what is happening. So sorry to be bursting bubbles, but that's not what.
Now, and I know that we got a lot of questions about for Lori, because Lori is in charge of all things with Danielle and Kenna and Kara, that Tuesday they will discuss Gamma. I'm sure they will.
Well, I believe we're going to be talking with some of the Mothers Against DeWine on Tuesday. We need to double check that, specifically about
with Lori.
Yeah, with Lori, with our boss. But about the Mount Carmel situation and how things are going there. That's the goal there. So to bring this on out, I got this little clip I wanted to show of Channel 19's Dan DeRose and what he thinks of all of us.
I can't handle him.
Mute.
I think the most powerful message that was said, I believe, by all three doctors: if you are unvaccinated, it is not if you will get the Delta variant, it is when you will get the Delta variant. Are you willing to play roulette with COVID-19? That is now your reality if you are unvaccinated, and you have just heard it from some of the state's top doctors. You can believe what you read on social media, or you can call your own doctor, you can call your pediatrician. And the important point was made that by being unvaccinated yourself, that children to children don't spread COVID as well, but adults to children spread COVID very well, especially when it comes to the Delta variant. So if you have someone in your life, a child, a grandchild, a niece, nephew, a neighbor, you are putting them at risk by being unvaccinated because they have no protection for themselves. They are 12 and under. It is not approved for kids that young yet, and you are putting them at risk. Some very important messages that we'll have to see if it holds. More than likely, the people who are not getting the vaccine are not going to listen to anything these experts in the field have to say. They're going to listen to Facebook articles that are absolute crap. And that is the problem, is there is too much social media out there that claims to be experts and claims to come from certain politicians, and it's just completely untrue. Don't listen to social media. Listen to the doctor that you go to, that you've probably gone to your entire life. Why would you not listen to that person instead of listening to somebody on social media who heard from somebody that read an article somewhere that said it's poison? I just don't get it.
So I guess
Tell us how you really feel, Dan.
Dan DeRose, are you going to play Russian roulette with your freaking BMI, or are you going to pick up a vegetable? What you going to do, bud?
Oh. But yeah, I actually forgot there was one other clip that was from Dr. Vanderhoff that was also, I felt kind of attacked, because he also talked about, that there are people on Facebook who speak with, some level of authority. or
I don't have any
authoritatively.
authority whatsoever,
Authoritatively,
but I
you,
know that 2
you know,
plus 2 is 4. I cannot handle dandruff at all. Like, that's just a personal opinion. By all means, I don't want anybody to, I'm not saying anything, but I'm really disappointed. That is the problem with media. Maybe if they would stop completely, because he's a reporter. What in the world does he have for virology?
because the experts said so, and we're
What
just crazy.
expert?
The ones who said that children do spread it, children don't spread it. The ones
Right.
who said
Which side is he
that
picking? Like, did he flip a coin? I cannot
the
handle any of
mRNA
that.
is old technology and exactly like all the old vaccines. The same ones that basically said all the things that we just pointed out, all of the divergence from reality.
And we also know that, there's such a thing as Dr. Cassidy had said at the congressional hearing. There's such a thing as natural immunity. No, we do not know how long it lasts, but it has to play a factor at some point in this. And I don't think Dan DeRose can spell it, much less know what it is. So I think I have got to go. Like, I appreciate everybody listening.
Thank you, all of you who
have a good night.
I mean, we've maintained viewership pretty much the entire time. I'm impressed with you people hanging on with us.
And thank you, Jim.
Thank you, everyone.